The gallery opening was a symphony of need. I could taste it in the air, the cloying scent of ambition and cheap champagne, the laughter a fraction too loud, eyes darting to see who was watching, flies at the window pane. I stood before a monstrosity of twisted metal and neon, a piece titled Eternal Pulse. A critic beside me babbled about post-human anguish. I said nothing. Silence, I have found, is the ultimate criticism. She entered my periphery like a blade cutting through fog. Victoria Sterling, the event's patron, a woman whose taste was law and whose boredom was a visible, expensive accessory. She was trailed by a murmuring retinue, an artist pleading for a commission, a journalist seeking a quote, a man in an overly tight suit who laughed at everything. They were all performing. I simply observed the art, finding it wanting. This too was a performance, but of a higher order, the performance of non-performance. She eventually severed herself from the crowd, drawn not to me but to the anomaly my stillness represented. "You despise it," she stated, coming to stand beside me, not looking at my face. "Despise implies an emotional investment I lack," I replied, my voice flat, calibrated to carry just to her. "It's simply inefficient. It screams effort. True power doesn't scream." A flicker in her cool gaze. The sycophant in the tight suit scurried over, offering her a glass. "Vic, stunning piece, no, so raw." She ignored him, her eyes still on the sculpture. "And what does true power do?" I said, "It exits." And I did. I turned and walked out of the gallery into the damp city night. I did not look back. That was Tuesday. The principle of absence. Most men would have texted the next day, some clever follow-up. I spent the week living. I recorded my podcast, The Unmoved Mind, on the virtue of indifference. I trained at my private gym. I declined 3 invitations to lesser events. My social media, a curated artifact, showed a page of my handwritten notes on Heraclitus, the skyline from my pre-dawn run, the spine of a first edition Schopenhauer. No faces, no parties, a life complete. On Friday, a message appeared. Unknown number. It's Victoria, the man who exits. The art was inefficient. The artist is furious. I find that interesting. I waited until Sunday evening. Interesting is the minimum viable product of intellect, I replied. I offered no question, no opening. Her response was quicker this time. And what is the maximum? I didn't answer. Let the question hang in the digital void. Let her mind work. The following Wednesday, she called. I let it go to voicemail. A smooth, measured tone. "I'm curating a private exhibition. I need a contrary voice. You're it. Dinner, Thursday, 8 p.m., Les Suites." I arrived at 8:07. Not fashionably late, indifferently late. She was at the bar, a sculpture in herself. She did not smile. Good. "You're late." "I was finishing something," I said, taking the seat beside her, not opposite. Side by side is less confrontational, more conspiratorial. Time is a non-renewable resource. I allocate it with precision. "And this dinner? A wise allocation?" The jury is out. The meal was a duel. She spoke of her world, testing me. I listened, dissecting her logic, not her emotions. When she mentioned a rival's successful show, I nodded. A tactical victory, not a strategic one. He appeals to the crowd. You have the potential to define it. And how does one do that? By ceasing to appeal. Define your own standard. Become the citadel they besiege. I revealed nothing of myself. When she asked about my background, I gestured vaguely. A past is just data. I'm interested in current operations. I turned the questions back on her philosophy, on the void at the center of the art world she served. I was not a suitor. I was an auditor. When the check came, she reached for it. I placed a single, heavier hand on the paper. "No, you invited. I assessed. The assessment has value. I pay for value." The principle, never be indebted, never be the guest. Outside, her car waited. "Can I drop you somewhere?" "I'll walk. The city is less itself at this hour, more honest." "Aren't you going to ask me for my number?" A challenge, a ghost of a smile. "I already have it," I said. "You texted me." I turned and walked into the unlit street. The next phase, strategic opacity. She invited me to a weekend at a country estate. A dozen people, brilliant minds. I declined. I have a prior commitment. The commitment was to reread Meditations in my silent apartment. My social media that weekend showed the book, a glass of whiskey, a chessboard mid-game, a quiet fortress. Her invitations became more pointed. I accepted 1 in 3. I was never the first to arrive, never the last to leave. I spoke sparingly, but when I did, it ended debate. I once contradicted a famous philosopher on a point of Stoic determinism. I didn't raise my voice. I cited source, chapter, line. Then I turned to Victoria and asked about the structural integrity of the estate's ancient bridge. The topic was dead. I had moved on. She was surrounded by competitors, wealthier men, wittier men, prettier men. They vied for her attention like jousting clowns. I never competed. I once found her in a heated debate with a tech billionaire about aesthetic theory. I listened for 2 minutes, then walked to the grand piano and, from memory, played the first few bars of Shostakovich's Bleakest Prelude. The conversation stopped. I stopped playing. I looked at Victoria. You're both wrong. The argument is rooted in a 19th century fallacy. Good night. I left the party. She called me an hour later, not angry, electrically alive. You are the most infuriating man I have ever met. I said, thank you, and ended the call. The culmination was inevitable. It happened at the opening of her definitive exhibition. She was radiant, the center of all energy. She saw me across the room, gave a small private nod. I gave a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of my head in return. I spent 40 minutes there, then made for the door. She intercepted me at the coat check, her composure a brittle film. You're leaving. Why? The work is done. You've cemented your standard. My presence is now redundant. That's it? Your final analysis? There was a crackle in her voice, not of anger, but of desperate investment. Final analysis? I repeated, putting on my coat with methodical slowness. Victoria, this was never an analysis. It was a demonstration. Of what? Of the principle that what is chaste fleeces, and what stands still, in utter, unshakable certainty. I finally met her eyes fully, holding a gaze that was neither warm nor cruel, but simply factual. Becomes the thing chaste. I walked out into the night. I did not wonder if she would call. I did not care. That was the final, unassailable truth of it. The power was not in the getting, but in the profound, liberating indifference to the outcome. My phone remained silent the entire walk home. It buzzed once as I entered my apartment. A single line from an unknown number that was, of course, known. The silence is unbearable. I read it. I placed the phone face down on the desk beside my waiting notebook. The page was blank. I preferred it that way. The story, after all, was already written. She was now learning to read it.